Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to rise in support of Bill C-305. And I want to again take the opportunity to acknowledge my friend from Nepean for his hard work and his leadership in moving this legislation forward. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-305 seeks to amend Section 430, subsection 4.1 of the Criminal Code, which relates to mischief against religious property. Section 430, subsection 4.1 of the Criminal Code makes it an offense for an individual to commit an act of mischief motivated by hate targeted at a place of worship, such as a church, mosque, synagogue, or temple. In addition to Section 430, subsection 4.1, there is also a section of a criminal code that deals with mischief targeted towards general property. The reason Section 430, sub 4.1 was added to the criminal code to deal specifically with acts of mischief motivated by hate targeted at religious property is in recognition of the fact that such acts of mischief are different than acts of mischief to general property. Take, for example, someone who sprays graffiti on the back wall of a restaurant. In such a case, the victim is the owner of the restaurant. Now, take the example of someone who sprays hateful graffiti on the back wall of a mosque or synagogue. That act is an act that targets an entire community. It affects an entire community, and it victimizes an entire community. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-305 would amend Section 430, subsection 4.1 of the Criminal Code by expanding the categories of properties to not only include places of worship, but to include the likes of schools, community centers, and seniors' residences. The expansion of these categories recognizes that mischief motivated by hate and targeted to people of a religious faith or a religious group often don't just take place at places of worship, but take place at religious schools or religious community centers or religious seniors' facilities. We've seen many examples of hate crimes that have been perpetrated against schools and community centers. We saw a few years back the horrific firebombing of the United Talmud Torah School in Montreal. More recently, in Ottawa, there was a string of mischief incidents that were motivated by hate, that targeted a mosque and 2 synagogues, but also targeted a Jewish learning center, as well as the Muslim Association of Ottawa. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-305 is good legislation. Its objective is laudable, and it's why I was proud to speak in favor, in strong support of Bill C-305 at second reading, and it's why I'm proud to speak in strong support of Bill C-305 at this stage of the legislative process. Now, Bill C-305, upon passing this House at second reading, was referred to the Justice Committee, of which I am a member. And as a member of the Justice Committee, I had an opportunity to study the bill in some detail, and Upon studying the bill and upon listening to the witnesses and reviewing evidence that was presented to the committee, I, along with the majority of members on the Justice Committee, believed that in some respects Bill C-305, as originally drafted, was overly broad, inasmuch as it would apply not just to religious schools, religious community centers, and religious seniors' residences, but all schools, all community centers, and all seniors' residences. Mr. Speaker, in my view, that would not be consistent with the purpose of Section 430, sub 4.1 of the Criminal Code, which was incorporated into the Criminal Code or added to the Criminal Code in recognition of the fact that mischief motivated by hate targeted at religious property is a crime that is different, that is unique from mischief that targets general property. And at the same time as finding that perhaps it was overly broad in some respects, I, along with the majority of members of the Justice Committee, could not really see any logic why the section applied in cases of mischief targeted towards religious property, but did not encompass similar acts of hate targeted at property associated with other identifiable groups. After all, when one commits mischief motivated by hate on a religious community center or an ethnic community center or an LGBTQ youth center, such acts of mischief are acts that target entire communities, affect entire communities, and victimize entire communities. And so, on that basis, the Justice Committee brought forward a few amendments to Bill C-305. As a result, Bill C-305, as amended, is in some respects narrowed inasmuch as it no longer applies to any school, any senior center, or any community center. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, Section 430 sub 4.1 is expanded to encompass not just acts of mischief targeted at religious property, but mischief targeted at property associated with any identifiable groups being already defined in the Criminal Code. Mr. Speaker, let me say in closing that I believe that Bill C-305 will help send a strong message that hate crimes against any identifiable group will not be tolerated, and that perpetrators of such egregious crimes will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Once again, I thank the member for Nepean for his hard work and leadership and urge the passage of Bill C-305. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.